Imagine you are a young artist living in 16th century Florence. You are a genius. You know it, and everyone else does too. You're making more money than you ever thought possible. The Medici have made their fortune in the slave trade, financing entire navies to conquer new lands, pillaging villages, kidnapping men, women, and children, chaining them up and selling them off in the slave markets of the Mediterranean. The Medici were not unique. Almost every patron of the arts lived a life stained with blood money when Botticelli painted the Adoration of the Magi. He painted it for a pope who had secured his seat by having his predecessor poisoned, murdered in a tower by a nun who drowned in a vat of wine. When Michelangelo sculpted David, he sculpted it for a republic that thrived on the backs of slaves who built the great cathedrals, palaces that glorified their enslavers. The Renaissance was made by men like you, talented artists who could make incredible works of art, but who needed patrons to survive. Patrons who understood the value of art, not as an end in itself, but as a means to an end. Who understood that art could be a weapon, a silent, deadly weapon that could awe and inspire and terrify all at once. Whether it was the Spanish conquistadors who plundered the Aztec empire for gold and jewels, or the English aristocrats who funded voyages of discovery across the Atlantic, we see the birth of the modern world, the triumph of human spirit rendered in marble and pigment. They lived in a world where a single misplaced brushstroke, a moment of artistic pride over political necessity, could mean a quiet disappearance into the Arno River. This wasn't a golden age of creation, it was a gilded cage, and the artists were the beautiful singing birds who knew the cage was locked from the outside. We call them geniuses, titans, the divine Michelangelo, the universal Leonardo. But this is a comfortable lie, a gilded frame we place around a picture of unimaginable darkness. Wealth was acquired through violence, through subjugating whole populations and reaping the benefits of cheap labor and unchallenged authority. Their rivals, the Pazzi family, were massacred in a church by men with axes, hired goons, silent and swift, an entire family erased from existence. Whispers follow the Medici everywhere they go. They live in fear of a Pazzi counterattack, of an assassin's blade plunged into their son's chest. Their daughter was married to the King of France, but only after her father. The infamous Lorenzo the Magnificent had bribed 5 men to murder the previous king. The finest connoisseurs in Europe are fighting over your paintings. Popes and kings want what you have. And the Medici family, the most powerful family in Florence, have commissioned you to paint the greatest work of art the world has ever seen. Your reputation is secure. You have arrived. You walk through the sun-drenched streets of Florence, stopping to take in the view from the Ponte Vecchio. The only bridge in the city spared from the devastating flood, its sides lined with shops, its center crowded with people enjoying the view. The Arno River snakes through the heart of Florence, reflecting the warm glow of the afternoon sun. It's a view synonymous with beauty, synonymous with Italy, synonymous with the Renaissance. But behind that beauty lies a darkness you can feel in the pit of your stomach. And now they come to you asking you to immortalize their dynasty with a painting. A propaganda piece meant to glorify their rule and strike fear into their enemies. You are a pawn in their game, a pawn they think they can easily control. Because you need their money, because you want to be famous, because you need to survive. Welcome to the Renaissance, an age of discovery and exploration, of invention and innovation, of unparalleled artistic brilliance. The great works of the Renaissance were not created in a vacuum. They were made in the shadow of unspeakable horrors. The world has forgotten this. Today we look at their art and we see God. Every perfectly rendered muscle on a statue, every serene Madonna smile was a performance for a tyrant. Look closer at the face of David, that young man who stares down the terrible Goliath, forever at one and the same time, both defiant and vulnerable. Look longer still, and you will see it is not a portrait of courage, but of torment. For Michelangelo knew what he was truly carving. He was carving his own soul. Michelangelo was not just a painter of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. He was a prisoner condemned to 4 years of labor in a quarry of human suffering. At 33, he was already famous throughout Europe. He had been commissioned by popes before. Why did he agree? Because he was a fatalist. In 1512, after working feverishly to complete the job, he fled Rome in terror for his life, only to be dragged back by order of the Pope. With brushes still in hand, he returned to finish his masterpiece, fueled by rage and a profound, tormented faith. Once he took on a project, he felt compelled to finish it, even if it killed him. He was the first pope to wear armor beneath his robes. To get the job done, Michelangelo did what he had to do. He turned his genius and his fury into art, completing the masterpiece in just under 4 years. For 4 years, he had been condemned to labor on the ceiling. And now, finally, he was free. But his genius could not erase the toll taken by the struggle. The brushstrokes on the ceiling told the story of his torment. The very plaster screamed his pain. The result was so stunningly beautiful that it seemed almost divine. And like a true Renaissance man, he was a patron of the arts because he understood that controlling the images made was a way to conquer and dominate. Look into their eyes. You will see not peace, but the artist's own exhaustion, his fury, his desperate, screaming plea for release. Michelangelo would flee Rome in fear for his life, only to be dragged back, forced to create beauty under the threat of excommunication and ruin. Also, his career depended on it. He needed the money. He was in debt up to his eyeballs. His enemies were circling, and this job would make him rich. And his battle was not with Goliath, but with his own patrons, with God and with the unyielding stone itself. When the renowned Renaissance sculptor, painter, and architect took on the assignment to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in 1508, it was a commission he did not want. But why? He was proud of his work, wasn't he? He had conquered the ceiling. He had beaten the devil and God himself and emerged victorious. Or did he really beat God? What if God had won? What if this masterpiece is nothing more than divine propaganda? A lie perpetrated by the papacy to encourage its followers to submit to its power? After all, isn't that exactly what propaganda does? It encourages submission, obedience, a kind of sleepwalking through life without ever really questioning authority. Isn't that what Michelangelo did when he submitted to the will of the warrior pope? Wasn't his genius used to further the illusion of divine right? Does the Sistine Chapel ceiling prove God's existence, or simply cover it up? But once the scaffolding was up, and he was lying on his back, staring up at the limitless expanse of the chapel ceiling, he wished he had never agreed. The ceiling was to be a series of 9 scenes from the book of Genesis: the creation of Adam, the fall of Lucifer, the expulsion from Eden, Noah's drunkenness, the great flood. He wasn't painting, he was wrestling. He was wrestling with the stone, with the angels, and with God himself. Each figure he created he coaxed into being as though it were alive. He wrestled each of them into existence as though they were fighting him every step of the way. The sacrifice of Abraham's son Isaac, the story of Jacob, wrestling with the angel, the first 3 prophets, and finally the last. 3 prophets with sibyls or pagan priestesses in between them. For 4 years, Michelangelo lay on his back, painting in plaster, dripping into his eyes, his spine twisting into a permanent question mark of agony. Wasn't an easy birth. The warrior pope who commissioned him, Julius II, was no gentle shepherd. Their relationship was not one of artist and patron, but a brutal psychological war where one man threatened to damn the other. But when you look closely at the prophets and sibyls staring down at us from the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, you can see that they are not serene, but exhausted. He was a prisoner painting the walls of his own magnificent cell, and we call it a masterpiece. In the end, he signed his name to it, hiding it as best he could, as if ashamed. There are some horrible things in the world, but the worst thing, I think, is a gentle face with evil intent. And then there was Leonardo. We picture him as the calm, wise sage, the man of science and reason. He wanted to understand the machine of God's creation, and to do that, he had to take it apart, piece by bloody piece. We have dissected the idea of evil so often that we have forgotten its opposite. Not good, not bad, just indifferent. He was an agent of chaos, but without any of the fire or passion that fuels such things. He was detached. He was curious. It was a prestigious assignment, but Leonardo was already bored with sculpting. Around this time, he began his anatomical studies in earnest, conducting dissections and filling notebooks with meticulous drawings of muscles, bones, and organs. He recorded the most intimate details of the body with a detachment that suggests a certain callousness. He described the feeling of fingers pressing against flesh, the sensation of hot blood spurting from a wound, But he does so with a clinical precision that strips these experiences of their humanity. This wasn't just science, it was sacrilege. He treated sacred vessels like common clay, violating the sanctity of the human form in the pursuit of knowledge. He saw the body not as a temple of the divine, but as a tomb, a repository of secrets best left undisturbed. He was desecrating the very essence of humanity in the name of progress. And in doing so, he became the monster he was trying to understand. He was captivated by the complexity of the body, seeing it as a microcosm of the universe, a perfect machine of interlocking parts. He dissected cadavers, studying their muscular attachments, the elasticity of arteries, and the texture of internal organs. Unlike his predecessors who relied on animal dissections, Leonardo insisted on working with human bodies.
Without believing
that animals were too different to provide accurate insights. He even went so far as to steal corpses, collaborating with grave robbers to procure cadavers. For him, the quest for knowledge outweighed any moral qualms. He explored the very core of existence, the human body, seeking to unravel the mysteries of life and death. In the dead of night, by the stuttering light of a tallow candle, Leonardo da Vinci became a ghoul. He realized that death was not an ending, but a transition, and the body was not a vessel, but a conduit. He was driven by a desire to comprehend the mechanics of life, to peer into the abyss and bring back knowledge. But in doing so, he became the very thing he sought to understand, a machine of insatiable curiosity. His father was a notary, and his mother was a peasant. At 15, he was apprenticed to a sculptor. By age 20, he was accepted into the prestigious workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, where he would spend 7 years mastering the techniques of painting, sculpture, and mechanical arts. His early works reveal a burgeoning talent, but also an unsettling preoccupation with death. There is a chilling fascination with dissecting form and function. Even in his religious paintings, there is a disconcerting literalness. Instead of the ethereal glow of an otherworldly savior, Leonardo gives us a baby with rather realistic proportions and distinctly human features, almost as if he were looking at the divine through the lens of an autopsy. He bribed hospital workers and grave robbers for fresh corpses, dragging them to a secret room. The same hands that would sketch the ethereal smile of the Mona Lisa would, hours later, be wrist-deep in the chest cavity of a dead man, peeling back skin, tracing the path of nerves with a cold scalpel. This wasn't just science. It was sacrilege, a morbid obsession. He drew the womb, the heart, the intricate machinery of life, but the cost was a dance with damnation. But reason can be the most terrifying tool of all when it lacks a soul. His obsession was not with beauty, but with deconstruction. He saw the human body not as a sacred vessel, but as a puzzle of flesh and fluid. Leonardo da Vinci was born in 1452 in a village outside Florence. In 1482, Leonardo moved to Milan and began work on a bronze horse, receiving a generous salary from the Duke. By the time he was 30, he had a complete map of the circulatory system, observing that the heart, the muscles, the nerves, they are all interconnected. But Leonardo's notebooks reveal another side, a darker, more disturbing one. So many of us spend our entire lives looking for beauty, searching for the extraordinary in the everyday. But sometimes it's right in front of us. Sometimes all we have to do is open our eyes and see. Michelangelo Buonarroti, the man who sculpted David, also built cathedrals and designed tombs. Some say he was a genius. It is the only work he ever signed. And he signed it in the blood pouring from John's neck. In David with the head of Goliath, the severed head of the giant is a self-portrait, his own face contorted in a silent scream of damnation. He wasn't depicting biblical stories. He was confessing his sins on canvas, forcing the world to look at the ugliness he carried within him. There is a hunger for authenticity, a craving for realness, in a world where everything seems fake. Caravaggio gave us a glimpse of something true, something disturbing, something beautiful. He bared his soul and spilled it onto the canvas, and in doing so, he created a masterpiece. But ultimately, the fire of that genius had to consume someone. He broke the law, and in doing so, he changed the course of history. He dared to be himself, and in doing so, he became immortal. But what if it was something else? What if it was the product of pain, born in the shadow of violence, conceived in the crucible of suffering? Their art is not beautiful in spite of their lives, it is beautiful because of them. It is the pearl born from the grit of their suffering, the light born from an abyss of cruelty, and the ghost of their torment is in every stroke, forever haunting the masterpieces we so casually admire. What if the greatest works of art in history are haunted by the torment of their creators? Enter Caravaggio, the man who did not just paint the darkness, but lived within it. His life was not a prelude to his art. It was the subject. He was a brawler, a drunkard, a murderer, who fled from one city to the next with a death warrant on his head. And his paintings are the evidence of his crimes. That technique he pioneered, that dramatic, violent contrast of light and shadow, chiaroscuro, it wasn't an artistic choice. It was his reality. It was the flash of a lantern in a pitch-black Roman alley, the glint of a knife before it strikes. When he painted the beheading of St. John the Baptist, he dipped his brush in a mixture of pigment and rage. We think of the Renaissance as this golden age, this explosion of beauty and light after centuries of darkness. The men who created the Renaissance were not divine. They were deeply, tragically, and violently human. There has been a resurgence of interest in this artist in recent years. He was an outlaw, a rebel, a criminal. I'm the host of a podcast. Thank you so much for listening.